Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Don't you understand, George? It's because you were not born.
Film church.
Well, a boy's best friend is his mother.
I like the stink of the streets. It makes me feel good. I like the smell of it. It opens up my lungs and gives me a hard-on.
Wow. Hello and welcome to Film Church Radio, the podcast that treats cinema as a religion. It's Sunday. I'm Lewis.
And I'm Branden.
And we are here to talk about movies. This is the 7th and final episode in a very special series where we've gone through the filmography of Sergio Leone. Normally each week, Branden and I alternate picking a film for us both to watch and discuss, but for the last 7 episodes, it's been all about Leone. And today we're talking about Once Upon a Time in America from 1984, starring Robert De Niro, James Woods, and Elizabeth McGovern. And of course, directed by Sergio Leone, the final film of this series. I can't believe we've made it, Branden. It's crazy. It's gone so fast.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
We're here.
I know.
The end of the road.
We're going to be talking about the film in depth in just a moment. But first, I'd like to introduce our very special guest for the final episode of this series. And I hope you don't mind, Zach. I was having a look. I was thinking of a way to introduce you properly. And I was going to say something along the lines of, our little gang isn't complete. But then I looked at the characters that were left, and it's Cockeye or Fat Mo. And I was like, I'm not going to choose either of those. So joining us to talk about Once Upon a Time in America is our friend Zach. Welcome back, Zach. How are you?
Hello. Good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming in. So yeah, we're going to be talking about Once Upon a Time in America in just a few minutes. But before we get started, we'd like to thank everyone who has been listening to the podcast and sending their love for the show. If you're new to the show and this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome. Me and Branden have been doing this for nearly half a year now. It's gone so fast. And we've racked up a few interesting episodes along the way. So be sure to go back, check them out, give them a listen, and let us know what you think. You can find us everywhere at Film Church Radio. And like I said, all our back episodes are streaming if you want to go and check those out. This is a film church, so we do post our episodes on Sunday. And if you really, really like the show, please share it with your friends. More people to come and join the congregation. That's what this is all about. And obviously, if you can rate and review the show, that would be perfect. What we do each week before we talk about the main film is me and Branden talk a little bit about the films we've been watching this week. But as we have a special guest, I'm going to start with you, Zach. What have you been watching this week, my friend?
I guess I've been watching a lot. I'll stick with the stuff that I liked. I did stream a film on HBO Max from 1979 called Breaking Away, which I've sort of been on my radar for a long time. It's a coming of age story about a small Indiana town about a group of friends who are bicycle racers, and it won an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. It's got a lot of early performances from some notable actors. Jackie Earle Haley, Daniel Stern, and who's the Dennis Quaid? Yeah, Dennis Quaid is in it. And all these guys are like 19, 20 years old in this film, so they're all baby faces. There's one guy in their group who is sort of enamored with racing, and it's kind of about those that weird year between teenagehood and adulthood. These guys have just graduated high school, and they're in a town where nobody really leaves town. Nobody really goes on to great things. And one of them wants to be a champion bicycle racer. And everyone around him doesn't really believe in him, or do they, by the end of the film. So it's very good. I really enjoyed it. And that was streaming. I also rolled out to the theater to see the new Celine Sciamma, I don't know if I'm saying her name right, film, Petite Maman, Little Mother.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful little movie. It was great. It's like this adorable time travel story. I think the thing that came to my mind is it was like a live action Miyazaki film. especially those Miyazaki films that are like Spirited Away or Ponyo, which are like, these are films made for my 8-year-old granddaughter, you know, so the protagonist is an 8-year-old girl, and it had that feel to it, I felt. So a good movie-going week for me.
That's awesome.
For the most part.
Yeah, Petite Maman is so beautifully understated. You know, I don't think it ever, you know, tries too hard to pull at the strings, because they're obviously there. You know, the emotional beats can quickly kind of take over, but it's just it's so beautiful, and just, you know, there's a lot about motherhood and stuff in there. It's just great.
And I'm gonna have to see it at some point.
Yeah,
because you guys have both seen it now.
Yeah.
Well, it's only playing
about it on the show.
It was only playing at one theater near me, and I think it's gone after this week. They don't seem to keep movies for longer than 2 weeks of that scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was also kind of like, I was a fan of Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty big departure from that. And I think that was kind of like, I don't know, it felt like there was probably a lot of, you know, dealing with a historical period and dealing with like sort of more weighty subjects. It was like, from an artist perspective, it seems like I want to do something small, but that small thing was like huge emotionally. Dealt with so much deep stuff.
Yeah, she's a fantastic storyteller on every level. It's great. You definitely should check it out, Brandon.
I will.
When you get a chance, when it's available.
It should be. I assume that it's probably going to come pretty quick now that the cinema run's over, because I know that it's streaming in the UK and it's been out, you know, other places quite a while. So I assume, you know, they're going to try and push it somewhere pretty soon. So what have you been watching, Brandon?
So I have not watched any films, but I have done a rewatch of the Book of Boba Fett.
How is it on the second watch?
Yeah, it's better. I mean, I still have issues with it. Like, it's not quite as good as Mandalorian to me, but also it's still just season 1. My biggest issue, like, not to go into any spoilers, but there's just like a chase scene that is super slow in one of the episodes, and it just bothers me so much. I'm like, what happened?
Is that the one where it's obviously sped up a little bit?
Yeah, kind of, yeah. And everybody, it's like supposed to be intense, but everybody's just going like 5 miles an hour. It's like, what's going on? But I did have this thought rewatching it where I was like, this show is more enjoyable if you think about it as like a Saturday morning cartoon rather than like your Sunday night drama. Like, it's just meant to be fun. It's not really supposed to be, you know, your serious emotional drama. Whereas like there is the episode, spoilers, that has Mando in it that is emotional, but it has nothing to do really with Boba Fett. So I think we were all hoping as Boba Fett fans, and especially with like the way that the Mandalorian season 2 ended with the scene that showed Boba Fett, I think we were all hoping it was going to be like Boba Fett as the Godfather. Yeah. You know, and it's just not that.
I think that there was definitely some, like, I don't know, they set up some things that I thought were really cool, and then they never paid off, or they kind of just rushed it and it was over too quickly, but, you know.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still a lot there to enjoy.
Yeah.
Like, but, yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yeah,
you know,
me too.
Super excited for Kenobi and everything. But yeah, that was it for me. I did notice one thing that I didn't notice the first time I watched it. There's a post-credit scene at the end of the series, or the end of the episode, the last episode. That shows one of the characters that you think died in the.
I remember.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Trying not to say who it is.
I got you.
All right, cool. Anyways, what have you been watching?
It's been good. It's been a really good week. So I took my wife Chelsea to go and see Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah.
She wanted to go and see it, and it was still playing. You know, one of the.
Have you seen it, Zach?
I have.
Yes.
Sweet.
One of the.
I thought it was okay.
Thought it was okay.
Really?
I thought it was okay.
It was.
I really liked the first like half hour, 45 minutes or so, I was like hooked into it. That the opening scene I think is great. It's like this wonderful chaotic, like there's all this stuff going on and people talking over each other, and it felt very real and
very well made.
I think I got a little bit bored in the middle of the movie. I think the middle stretched a little long for me. There's a lot of things I like about it, which I was disappointed that I didn't like it as much as I hoped I would, because the lead performances from Ke Kwan and Michelle Yeoh are amazing, and I don't know the name of the actor who plays their daughter. She's like phenomenal in the whole film. Like really, really, really good performances. And the stunt work was done by like a team of guys who started out on YouTube.
Oh, awesome.
Who were like, they would take like famous Hong Kong Kung Fu movies and then kind of do like parody short films of them, but they would figure out how did they do these fight scenes, and they would recreate the fights. And that group of people got to be the actual action choreographers. I think they're all in the movie. Like they've got that one security guard, the sort of heavyset bald guy. Yeah, he's like one of the guys from that YouTube channel. Oh, okay. So there's like a lot of things about it that I liked, and so I was kind of disappointed that it. I'm gonna say it. I'll give it a second chance. Yeah, a little bit down the line with some distance from it, but. I thought it was okay.
Yeah. How was your rewatch, Lewis?
I found it so much more emotional this second time than the first time. I think because you kind of know that those character beats are coming. Yeah. So like when certain things start to happen in the third act, like, you know, tears were coming, and I heard a sniff from next to me, and I was like, Chelsea's moved by it as well. So I turned round, and it was the woman next to her, and Chelsea was like.
You know? So she's sitting in between two crying people.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I love it. I think that just every time I've only seen it twice, but I love how it just boils down to a universal, you know, message that's just so beautifully told.
Was anything lost to you on your second time seeing it? Because I know the first time, like you and I went to see it together, and it was pretty packed, and like the audience was going crazy the whole time. So I feel like that heightened the experience a lot. So like, was anything lost with that? Like, I'm assuming you didn't have quite the same experience.
Yeah, not the same. I mean, it was a smaller screen, but it was still full. Okay, which I was pretty. You know, happy about. But I mean, I just get lost in it. You know, it's really hard to go and see a film with Chelsea and not constantly be like, does Chelsea like this? You know, because I feel like my film choices are a little bit more eclectic than hers. So to kind of go and watch a film with her, I'm always a little bit on edge. But with this, I was like, I know she's going to like it. So I kind of just sank into it a little bit more. So the audience reaction. I mean, it was still there. People were still laughing and stuff, but it wasn't
quite as crazy.
Yeah.
It wasn't really I saw it again, you know, a few weeks ago, and it was not as packed, and the audience really wasn't reacting as much. I still enjoyed the movie, but like the one thing that was weird to me about watching it the second time, this is going to be a little bit spoilery for anyone listening, but I'll try to be still vague a little bit. But the part where the guy runs and he jumps on top of the thing and lands on it. Like when we saw it, like people lost their minds. Yeah. And the second time we saw it, like it was just quiet. And I noticed that part of the movie is just silent. Like when he lands, there's like no noise. Yeah. And so it felt weird. Like that there was no like sound effect or like anything there. But I didn't notice it the first time because literally everyone in the theater was like busting out laughing.
Yeah, it's going to be weird to watch this one at home, I think. Yeah. Because especially like the scene with the rocks. You know, there's that. It's very obviously structured so that people can laugh, and then you can read the text or whatever. So, but I mean, I love this film. I think it's great. Yeah. So, and then Alamo was showing Rear Window. for their Sunday
Yeah.
matinee, and I don't think I've ever seen it on the big screen. I've seen
Yeah, I was gonna ask.
quite a few.
Yeah.
So I went along and just enjoyed a Jimmy Stewart, Grace Kelly afternoon. And it's just, I mean, that is a film that still holds up. It was the scene where Lisa, Grace Kelly's character, goes up to the apartment and they're distracted, and then you see Thorwald like come back to the door. I could feel the tension in the room, which was so good. Just to be like, this is, I don't know, 60 years old now, 70 years old, and it's still got the same like dramatic tension.
Mm-hmm.
And you know me, I was driving home from the cinema and I was like, oh, Jimmy Stewart was great. I'm going to listen to the Vertigo soundtrack. And then as soon as that first bar hit, I was like, I'm going to watch Vertigo when I get home.
Yeah.
So
now,
I did it. I rewatched
my
Vertigo.
memory is Rear Window.
Yeah.
He absolutely does not want to fuck Grace Kelly.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, this is what's really interesting. Him. Yeah, she is very forward. And what's interesting about watching Rear Window and Vertigo together is it's both of them are so obviously about Hitchcock. I mean, Vertigo, everyone knows that, but Rear Window is kind of like, he knows that even if he got the girl, there was no way that he would be able to do anything. So you can just see him like emulating that through the character. And they try and play it off like, she's too perfect, she's too great, she's too perfect, but it's just his personal impotent feelings, I think, that are coming out.
Yeah.
But Vertigo is
psychosexual readings of Hitchcock movies.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I mean, he was a very horny man. So
I'm gonna have to rewatch Vertigo again. I haven't watched it in a while.
I could watch it every day and still be very happy. I love that movie.
Yeah.
It went to my top film of all time. So
from after watching it yesterday.
Yeah, I just love it so much. There's still so much in there that I can get from it.
Yeah.
And Kim Novak is just gorgeous. So
yeah,
it's wonderful. I love it.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I can feel more Hitchcock films in my future. Because once I start, it's hard to stop.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, I was saying to you the other day that I feel like at some point I want to watch all of the Alfred Hitchcock Presents show.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to watch the whole thing just to, because he he's the host.
I'd love to, his skits are pretty famous, right? I don't think I've ever seen any of them, but...
Yeah, he did, if I'm remembering correctly, he did direct some of them, but not all of them. So, but he was the host of the show, so he would come out and introduce, and then have like little funny cutscenes in between, and we'll be right back.
Yeah,
in his way.
Yeah,
and his nice little silhouette drawing.
That's right.
Yeah,
of his portly figure
that I knew from The Simpsons before I knew Hitchcock. Ironically enough,
really.
Yeah. I think it's the third trias of horror. That's how it starts. So, all the Simpsons.
That's why
Homer
you love Simpsons so much.
Homer fits it perfectly.
He does, yeah. Oh man, they keep coming up in reference to our podcast. So, well, now we're going to go and talk about our main film today, which is Once Upon a Time in America, 1984. As always, we are going to get into some spoilers. We're going to talk about third, and in this case, fourth and fifth act spoilers, and kind of character, ups and downs and all that kind of stuff. The summary for this movie is a former Prohibition-era Jewish gangster returns to the Lower East Side of Manhattan 35 years later, where he must once again confront the ghosts and regrets of his old life. And I just want to let everyone know, I know we mentioned it last week, but the cut that we watched was the European cut. It was the 3-hour, 47-minute one, and not the American...
Or 49?
Yeah. Not the American 2 hours, 20 minutes butchery that I've been reading about. So we did watch the European cut, which I think, apart from the director's cut, which is maybe 20 minutes longer, it's the most complete.
The extended cut. And I think that extended cut kind of came out after Leone's death.
Yeah, I think it was Scorsese.
Sounded like it was
right?
like reconstructed version of his earlier cut. That was released on video.
Because it was premiered at Cannes, and then the studio cut it down, and just quite a lot of that original cut has been lost forever.
Right.
So kind of like Orson Welles' Amberson film. So but yeah, so we watched the European cut, which is, like I said, probably the most complete one out there. And this film, what a way to end a career.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different to what we've seen before, which I feel at this point I was kind of begging for. We've talked about it. There's, especially watching them chronologically, there's so many beats that kind of keep coming back. And not only do they come back, but it's in the same environment, so it's hard to do it differently.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel with this, the things that he's been reaching for the last few films came through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they worked really well.
Yeah.
But so this was my first time seeing it. I mean, I know we're going to get into it, like the film and everything. Had you all seen it already, or was this the first time watch?
I had seen most of it. Rewatching it this time, I realized that I hadn't actually seen all of it. I think the first time I saw it was probably like 10 years ago, and I think it was on 2 DVDs. The first, there's an intermission, so the second DVD was just after the intermission. I think the second DVD had like a scratch on it, and I kept trying to finish the movie, and it just would not get through a certain the scene where he comes in, Noodles comes in back in the room with the gang, and then he gets in a fight with Max, and Max yells at Carol to get out. It was just getting frozen and skipping the whole scene, and I couldn't watch it. And I was like, I'm just not gonna finish this movie right now. And then I never went back and finished it. So yeah,
which
first time
is really, it's only an hour.
Yeah, I know.
Roughly.
It's
it's a lot that happens in that hour.
Yeah.
And two, it's it's right after, the most intense scene of the film, and so I probably was just I don't even really feel like finishing this, and I just oh well. So 10 years, finally finished it. That's my story. What about you, Zach?
Never seen it before. My only two, when you guys started the series, the only two Leone blind spots I had was this and his first film, which I still have not seen, The Colossus of Rhodes.
Yeah.
So 6 out of 7. So this was the first time for me. I think I was always kind of turned off by watching this, or hesitant to watch it, I guess, because it probably had more to do with marketing growing up in the DVD era, where a lot of films that my first impression of them would be a DVD cover found in the store. And I feel like this is something that there was probably at some point where it was packaged as a double feature with something like Goodfellas, because they were both distributed by Warner Brothers, which is not a movie that, they're both gangster movies. That's about all. Both gangster movies with Robert De Niro in them, and that's about where the similarities end. So I think that I was always just kind of I've seen this movie. I've seen The Godfather. I've seen The Godfather Part 2. I've seen Goodfellas. This is probably rehashing things I've already seen. I always just kind of made assumptions about it, and so I just never really dipped my toe into it. Really, though, the only thing I ever knew about it was I knew it was a Leone film. I knew it starred Robert De Niro, and I think I knew that it was about Jewish gangsters. I think so. That was a detail that I always knew, but there was just always something holding me back from dipping my toe. Probably the running time too, but
yeah, for sure.
It was kind of I felt this probably isn't an essential viewing, which I was completely wrong about that.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Okay, so real quick, I mean, I don't know how this episode's going to go as far as what tangents and rants will go on, but just for I think everybody should go through and just kind of say real quickly how they felt after watching the movie. Personally, I feel torn. I'm like they had me in the first half. Like I really like all the scenes with the kids and stuff. But then ultimately by the end of the movie, I'm left feeling like, what was the point of that? So that's just kind of where I'm at. What about you guys?
Well, I loved this movie. Maybe going in not knowing anything about it was for the better.
Yeah.
But this movie had me hooked as soon as I realized that I wanted the phone to stop ringing. And and that was kind of the moment where I was like, what is happening? What is going on in this thing? Where is this taking me? Well, from a directing standpoint, I thought this was fabulous. It felt like very familiar territory for Leone in terms of shot compositions and editing style, and yet it felt restrained. You know, it was like there's something familiar about the way where he's putting the camera and how he's filming these characters and these scenery, and yet it did not look anything. You know, it felt completely new compared to everything that I'd seen before.
Mm-hmm.
Thematically, I love a good, just sort of unhinged, all over the place kind of story, especially when, for me, I felt like everything kind of came together. I never felt like I was left wondering, well, what about that? What about that? It was sort of, this is a movie that my impression is the second viewing is going to be even better now that I know where everything goes. So I'm actually very excited to carve 4 hours out of my next weekend to sit down and watch it again, because I would love to rewatch the first 30, 40 minutes of the movie, knowing everything that comes after that.
Yeah.
High praise.
Yeah.
Oh, and great score.
I mean, that's a consistent with Morricone.
Yeah.
It's just been banger after banger. This film is a masterpiece. It moved me. It was beautiful. Every shot was just like an oil painting. The characters were flawed. I mean, America was the most America I've ever seen. It was just, I don't know. I was like, I feel like I've been a bit cold through this whole series. You know, I've enjoyed them, and I can see that they're, you know, well-made films and stuff, but I've never been, that was incredible until I watched this film.
Wow.
And I was like, wow.
I was thinking, even though I haven't watched The Colossus of Rhodes, I was thinking of something that I think you said, Brandon, in your episode on The Colossus of Rhodes, where you felt like it was like that movie was a really good, like, movie for boys, right?
Yeah.
It was like you could sit down with your 10-year-old son or a little brother and watch this movie, and this is like a good movie for a young kid to sink their teeth in. And I haven't rewatched all of the westerns over the past 6 weeks like you guys have, but jumping off of that, it does seem like there's a progression, especially an emotional maturity that is occurring over the course of all of these movies, culminating in this, which really is a mature and emotional film.
Yeah, because we were talking last week about how, you know, as soon as the penny dropped that these films are not about, you know, romance, it's more about friendship. Like I said at the top, I just feel like this just worked. Like that friendship story just got me, you know, because they were both, you know, it wasn't ever kind of really explicit that they loved each other, but you could tell they did. And that, you know, that at the end where they come together after all these years and they're both been torturing themselves about what they did to the other person pretty much.
Right.
It's just, oh my gosh, it was so beautiful. And just like that was the romance of the story, you know, they weren't good people, but they had each other, and that's what mattered, you know. I know we're going to get into the despicable things that happens that they do.
Yeah.
But that's another part that I was like, for me, I feel like it was necessary because these characters, like, it's part of their character. Whereas with one, it just wasn't, you know. He wasn't
Yeah.
like, it just was in there for no particular reason. Whereas this, it kind of told you a lot about the character. You know.
I am glad that both of you guys like this movie because, yeah, I just feel kind of a little bit, I don't know, lost.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you guys like the movie so you can explain to me why it was good.
Yeah, of course.
But but I mean, it does feel like to me like it feels like a novel. Like it's a much slower pace. There are so many like details in this movie that like it's not really the dialogue. There's no like I was trying to find quotes for the opening and the closing of the movie and like nothing was standing out. It's like the dialogue is not like a part of the movie that really stands out. It's like it's all the descriptive things that would be there in a novel if it was a novel, where it's visual because it's a movie. So you have to like read into like the shots and the pacing and what things cut to and where your eye is led and all that stuff, which a lot of times end up going over my head because it's just so much. Like my brain just doesn't work that fast. You know what I mean? So, yeah, and it's not really like I don't mind slow movies necessarily, but I do want it to like have meant something.
Yeah.
Like whether it's fast or slow, like a fast movie can still be terrible too. You know what I mean? But like by the end of it, I guess for me personally, I didn't feel like, oh, that makes sense because the character Noodles throughout the film, he's trying to make sense of his life, right?
Yeah,
and then by the end, he never really gets there though, right? Like at the end, he's left still.
I think I think it's more he's having to face up to what he did, and I think part of the poetry of this movie is that so many films, and I know that we've had The Irishman now, but so many films show us them in their heyday, but this is kind of the three parts of their life. The most important, it's like when the world is like everything, is when they're making the money, they're doing, they're living that dream. But then we also get to see the characters kind of as old men with like, in this life that they thought they lived is gone, and instead Noodle's got nothing to show for his life.
Yeah.
He doesn't never talk about any family. He's just been, sleeping early for the last 30 years, It's not as glamorous as they thought it was going to be. And even James Woods, it's like caught up for his character. Max he's in this thing now where the only way out is suicide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it would benefit me to watch every gangster movie and then watch this because like we were saying with Once Upon a Time in the West, there's like some symmetry here where Once Upon a Time in the West you said was like the most Western that you ever saw in the West, whereas this is like the most gangster that, or not even the most gangster, but it's like it's taken the genre and it's still a fairy tale, but it's also realistic in that like I'm used to watching a film, and even though it being about villains, I'm rooting for them, right? And it's like it's like the glorification of like gangsters or violence or anything like that. All the other movies, all the other genres, or all the other gangster movies have done that. Whereas this one, it's like, you get 2 hours and 40 minutes into the film, and then you have this horrible, horrible rape scene where you're, at that point, I was like, I mean, I guess this is like just a terrible guy. Like, obviously you hate him at that point. But then, just thinking about it, I'm like, okay, even like if that scene wasn't in there, I'm actually not supposed to like this guy anyway. He's not a good person.
Yeah.
With or without that. It's like they're bad guys.
Yeah, to me, and Zach, I want to get your input because I think that was it just showed us that, he'd like done this really romantic thing. He'd like taken her out to dinner and kind of like bought out the whole place, and now he was like, I've held up my part of the bargain. Now I get paid, you know. And it's that mentality of like, this is how my world is I do a job, I get paid, you know, and you are the money, unfortunately, in this transaction. And he comes away from it, and you can tell that he's like, oh, God, I can't believe I did that. But even the people he loves, he's going to hurt because of the environment he's in.
Well, I mean, sex for him has always been something he either takes or pays for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's like a direct through line from the first time we see him as a kid, where he's being a peeping Tom, watching her while she dances and undresses, to him ultimately raping her. I mean, every time that he loses his virginity to a prostitute that he didn't even have to buy the cupcake for her.
Yeah.
They blackmailed the cop and he gets his first lay free because they're blackmailing the cop to pay for it. You know, I don't think he's never had sex with someone that he wasn't taking it by force or paying for it in some capacity or getting it paid for. When he gets out of jail, it's the prostitute in the hearse.
Yeah.
As far as like this kind of like despicable character, unlikable character element, I think what was interesting to me about this is there's a lot of times where people talk about gangster movies, and I think like Scorsese gets brought up a lot in this, where as a criticism of those films, the criticism is you're glamorizing the lifestyle. And I think that I disagree generally with that critique of a lot of, like, at least the ones that I can think of, as kind of bad faith readings of the movies. But there is, say, like a morality to the characters in The Godfather.
Yeah.
There's not really, to the best of my memory, is your characters are defending their family, and so there's this sort of morality where everything is for the family. And I don't know if I'll talk about the Scorsese movies since they come after this movie, but it was really interesting that this movie is almost, in my knowledge of like pre-code early 30s gangster movies, is also kind of limited, but there was this general sentiment of portraying the general, as long as the message was crime doesn't pay, you're sort of okay, right? That had to be the message.
Yeah.
And I, like you mentioned, talking about having to see more gangster movies, there does seem to be an almost a big like element of this film is crime doesn't pay, but I'm going to show you in the most realistic, ugliest way possible that there isn't any morality to these characters.
Yeah.
There's nothing to like about them, even as anti-heroes. They're not Robin Hoods. They're greedy, and they treat other people like shit. If that person isn't something that they can benefit from, they'll stab. You know, the core story here is about two best friends who betray each other.
Yeah. And
that's kind of like, it doesn't matter how close you are to someone, they'll betray you or you'll betray them. And at the end of the day, your highest moments are getting stoned in the opium den.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's like the happiest moment of his life. At least that, I've read, and maybe we can get into this later. I don't know if we want to get to it now, but there's interpretations of the ending and how it plays into the portrayal of the events in the 60s. But my reading of the ending was basically, this guy is pathetic. This is the high point of his life, is getting stoned. It's the only time that he was maybe truly happy.
Yeah, because he wasn't himself. He was so out of his own body that, you know, it wasn't him. He wasn't there. He wasn't himself.
Right.
I agree with you there. I don't think that this is an opium-infused dream. I think the cars at the end are maybe more to do with his mental state at that point, and kind of just like, you know, I don't know, wanting to go back and change things maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, because Yeah, that whole opium scene that's something I don't feel like we've seen a lot of in cinema. So when that happened, I was like, oh, like, we're going to go there. This is an opium den, and it's packed. Like the whole,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any characters in this film that aren't awful. Everyone does something horrible at one point. It's just, it's not a good depiction of America.
No, and I think a good contrast there too, but is the one guy in the group. He's the one who buys the cupcake for Peggy.
Yeah,
I think that was her name, but he ends up eating it while he waits for her.
yeah,
He'd rather eat the cupcake than lose his virginity.
yeah,
and that's the guy who later on is the William Forsythe character, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the gap in his teeth, who seems like the most horror obsessed one
yeah,
in the group. Like there's a part where he says like he'll take his cut in merchandise, as in the whores, and he doesn't need cash, just trade it in. I wanna get laid. Which is, kind of an interesting arc of showing the corruption of a kid who, at the beginning just, I'd rather eat this cupcake that I spent a nickel on. Who down the line is, take the cupcake. I want the pussy.
yeah.
Pardon my French.
Yeah, I think actually that the scene where he's a kid and he eats the cupcake was one of my favorite scenes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It's just so well done. It's such a, like, I don't know. It's just so telling of that character.
Yeah.
But also the fact that he's like, he's just a kid. Like, he's a kid who's like, he thinks he's going to, go have sex for the first time, but he's still, like, he's still just a kid, and he just wants to eat this cupcake.
Yeah.
Like,
huge. Yeah, there's like huge elements of, like, stolen innocence or lost innocence in a lot of that youth stuff. I mean, the one kid who dies is I assume the youngest. He's the smallest one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I really liked all the scenes with the kids. Like, I could have watched the whole movie with just the kids, and it made me really kind of sad that Leone didn't have more movies with kids.
Yeah.
Because he seemed to handle them so well.
Yeah.
I mean, all their acting was incredible.
Yeah.
Like none of it was like, oh, that's just a kid trying to act.
Yeah.
It felt authentic. And the kid who plays Patsy, the one that we were talking about, I had this thought of like, it would have been amazing if his older self was Ray Liotta, because he looks like him when he's a kid. Not that the older actor was a bad actor or anything, but just the look-alike.
I was going to say, especially with the Max character, is it Rusty Jacobs who plays the younger version of James Woods? Yeah. I mean, they don't look alike, but I don't know how they. You could tell as soon as I saw him, I was like, okay, that's going to be James Woods' character. Yeah. He just kind of, there's a way, all of them kind of fit their character really well. And it's not like I don't think, I mean, the only, slight caveat to that is Cockeye is like, you can tell that the older version is trying to keep one eye shut through most of his scenes. Yeah. Oh, Cockeye.
Film debut of Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
Where?
And she played younger
Deborah.
Oh my gosh.
Deborah, yeah.
I didn't do my research.
Yeah, she's like 13 or 12, depending on when those. This movie was shot like over the course of 82, 83. So depending on what year they filmed the kids scene, she's either 12 or 13 years old.
Well, at least.
But like she looks like Elizabeth McGovern and her do look.
Yeah.
I mean, like Elizabeth McGovern doesn't really look like Jennifer Connelly does now, but like in context of the movie, they were like perfect.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I think in general the casting of the children is sort of perfectly aligned with most of the adults, where you are able to figure out, and the second you see them, the second you see her, you know who she is.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only character that I feel I wanted to see more of is Joe Pesci.
I know, right? Yeah.
As soon as he comes on screen, I'm like, here we go. I just want him to be his character from Goodfellas. Every time he kind of shows up on screen, and this was a much more reserved, Joe Pesci.
Yeah, but still so believable.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like every time he shows up, like not once does he not like reach the level of caliber that everyone else is on.
Yeah,
and
he's just got that persona where you can, like, if you say, oh, he's a pretty important crime boss, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
I can buy that. He's very intimidating.
Yeah, he was in talks originally to play Max.
Oh man.
But after talking, like having a talk with Leone was like, you this really isn't the part for you. Like it's not, it doesn't really fit. But he like basically let him have his pick of whoever else he wanted to play.
Oh man.
And he picked Frankie.
I would have loved to have seen Pesci as Max. Those little scenes where he's like, "Don't call me crazy." Like,
oh yeah.
Oh boy. Pesci would have knocked that out of the park. But James Woods did a very good job.
Yeah. I really like James Woods in this film.
Yeah.
He's got that very kind of, salesman quality to him, where you can tell that people do what he wants because he's very smooth and slick and like he's been leading this gang. But there's also, the craziness underneath, the fear.
Mm-hmm.
He was in his prime at this point too, because this is right after Videodrome.
Yeah.
And before Salvador. And those are like, now that I've seen this film, it's like 3 banger performances, like one after the other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I've seen him in anything else, so I'll have to check out some of his other
definitely movies. Is I think a better actor when he's younger. I think that his stuff in the 80s is probably that I've seen, but he's a good like supporting actor. Like he plays the dad in the Virgin Suicides. That was 99, and he's good in that. It's a smaller role, but he's a good actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe not anymore. I don't know. I don't think he's worked in a long time.
Yeah, it is weird seeing him on the screen because I don't feel like we've seen him for a while.
Yeah.
Like, in anything kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean,
he became a Twitter conservative, so I don't think he's.
Oh, okay. What a shame.
I don't know if he's trying to get jobs in Hollywood.
But yeah, I mean,
I think the most recent movie I saw him in was like Scary Movie 2.
Oh boy!
Wow.
Where he plays a parody of the Max von Sydow priest from The Exorcist.
Okay.
Which he was funny in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah. He's just the perfect, supporting actor. You can tell that he's probably got a reel of clips from a supporting actor nomination somewhere because he does it so well. He plays off everybody really well. The Robert De Niro in this reminded me a lot of, and I know it's come a lot later, but of The Irishman and his performance in that. Just a very, he's obviously not the smartest. He's very stoic most of the time.
Yeah.
He
doesn't
give a lot away from his face.
I mean, I think this movie has a lot of parallels to The Irishman.
Oh yeah.
Just the sort of theme of the gangster growing old into this sort of sad, lonely figure.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro in the lead, playing the same character over the decades. The stuff with, that movie's all about Jimmy Hoffa, and this movie has all this stuff about, the infiltration of the Union and by the gangsters and stuff. So
in the book, it says Max was based off Jimmy Hoffa. So,
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that was kind of what the end to I was reading was supposed to be, where he kind of disappears behind the trash can was like because of like they pulled that from the Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. The parallels are very apparent.
Yeah.
I mean, are we going to talk about the bad scenes?
Let's talk about him.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we've talked about him a little bit already, but
yeah, I mean, it happens twice.
Mm-hmm.
Sexually assaulting someone,
Mm-hmm.
and the bit with the babies. Oh my god! Like I got so like angry watching that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how could you do that? Like, I understand like to mess with him, but to do it to all of them.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And then to lose the the list.
And they're like, oh well. Oh my god.
Danny Aiello is great.
Oh yeah. I mean, this movie is very interesting the way it deploys humor, because there's not a lot of humor in it.
No.
And there's a couple of moments where the humor didn't work for me. But then there's moments like Danny Aiello walking out of the police station with the roses, mugging for the cameras, and he is just like, I'm cracking up.
Yeah. I love it when he grabs the guy through the window and then like lets him go and gives him a pat because he knows that the cameras are still there.
Right, because he's having his first. He just had his firstborn.
Yeah.
So it's like, I'm gonna forgive you today, this time.
I love how angry he gets as well with the girls when he's like, he's gonna be master of the house someday.
Yeah, and then when he pulls he unwraps the baby and just like throws her down on the bed, and being perverted with his wife.
Yeah.
It's little
he
like
did like he's being perverted with his wife, and then the camera turns and you see that the kids are right there.
Yeah.
Like looking just horrified,
all dressed perfectly the same, sitting neatly in the corner.
Okay, so we're walking around the rape scenes. We went from the rapes to the babies, so let's talk about the rape scenes.
Yeah. Both are just so uncomfortable. And we said this last week, like, especially, I mean, the one in the car is like, it seems to go on forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like, forever, and then...
And the driver just keeps driving.
Yeah.
Until he doesn't.
Yeah. But still, it's like, it's a little late, bro.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I mean, there's... to me, I feel like there's an element of this driver has probably driven people where this is happening in the back seat of his car, that this isn't like an abnormal thing for him to experience.
He's paid for his discretion.
And so yeah, I mean, there is that too little too late element, but it goes on for so long that even this guy who's probably turned a blind eye to this many times before finally can't take it anymore. And that, I mean, a great moment with Noodles, who thinks that, here, take her home. He can just give money to the driver and the driver just doesn't, and leaves him high and dry there. Yeah, I mean, I think that both scenes are meant to be uncomfortable. There's definitely, I'm curious to like read younger audiences' takes on this film, on these scenes, because it seems like younger audiences, like young adults now, there's a tendency to call out scenes like this as sort of not being, you can't include it, you shouldn't include it, or you have to have it stated within the film that this is wrong. And for me, something like these scenes is, you don't have to tell me that it's wrong because I know it's wrong. And but I think too that it's like a level of brutality that you just don't see in gangster movies, and that's maybe going back to this idea that there's no glamorization at all in this film. Is that you never see gangsters rape women in gangster movies. But you know that it happens. So there's this kind of like, I feel like Leone is like, well, we need to show all of the shitty things that these guys do.
I mean, I think there's a definite correlation. And knowing that Leone is such a big fan of American cinema, you know, there's a reason why The Public Enemy is so well known when Jimmy Cagney like smashes the grapefruit in his girlfriend's face, because that's pretty much as close as they could get to like, you know, sexual assault as we got to right now. And that is so shocking still, you know, it's like, oh my God.
Right.
So I think there's definitely that link there. He's like, you know, this is what we've been trying to tell you for ages. These people are not glamorous. You know, Jimmy Cagney is really cool, but he is not. Yeah, he is not the character that he plays on screen.
Well, I also think it's kind of telling of just, you know, the fact that the movie is called Once Upon a Time in America. It's supposed to be like, you know, which is a fairy tale title. Yeah. But it's like, you know, I'm guilty of, as well of a lot of Americans, of, you know, putting America on this pedestal and like, you know, turning a blind eye to like the evils that we've done and where we come from and stuff. And I talked about this like with Once Upon a Time in the West. It was kind of the same thing where it's like none of these characters are redeemable. Yeah, you know, it's like this is where we come from. This is the story of America in a lot of ways. You know, I mean, it's, you know, I hope that we've come a long way, but also in a lot of ways, like we're still trying to fight to be a better country than we've been. Yeah, I mean, in recent history.
You see films like Moonlight that isn't necessarily about, you know, gangsters and stuff, but, you know, there's a character that's obviously born into this kind of world, and then in the third stage of that film, he is, you know, part of it. He can't escape it, you know. So these films are still being made today. And obviously, as you know, I think it's important that he wasn't American, Leone. That this film is like the outside looking in. It's kind of like, you know, like you said, the fairy tale aspect. But this is like, this is how people get ahead. You know, you see the rich and the kind of the people that are prospering. Quite a lot of them are probably, you know, it's backhanded. It's not, you know, through grit and determination.
Yeah. I think also, like, back to what Zach was saying about the younger generations, like, what they would think of this movie now. Like, I feel like, you know, sometimes, you know, rape scenes show up in movies, like more modern movies. You know, they're not quite as grotesque as this, but usually it's like a part of a revenge thing. Like, there's a clear bad guy and a clear good guy, and, you know, the bad guy does something horrible, and then either, you know, the person gets revenge or the hero goes and acts revenge on them, you know, like I think about like Kill Bill, you know, or
for a few dollars more.
Yeah.
I mean, the rape revenge story is a type of story. I also, it's, I'm generally of the opinion that sort of nothing is off limits in terms of like, I don't think there's any one thing that should be that has to be excluded from art. Right. But there are far more offensive rape scenarios in like comedy movies that are far less graphic than this, but are far more, at least to me, disturbing, because I mean that was kind of like there's 80s comedies, you know, comedy films from the same time that this movie was released, where rape is a joke or is rewarded. Revenge of the Nerds, or I forget which John Hughes movie has a scene where the kid sleeps with a girl while she's passed out, you know, where the victims are so happy to find out that happened to them. Oh, that it was you or whatever. I find that far more pernicious, and that stuff's not graphic, than to basically show it for what it is in this movie, which is ugly and disturbing, and you know you want to turn away or fast forward through them, especially that second one for how long it lasts.
Yeah.
But it felt like something that Noodles would do.
Yeah. I mean, we've already seen it happen. You know, he breaks in, they go to the bank and start kind of robbing it, and she's like, hit me, and before you know it,
make it look real, or something.
and before
like
you
that.
know it, she's
well, and that's actually, that scene has a bit of humor that I didn't like, which was, "We're going. Are you coming?"
Yeah,
I'm coming. I didn't like that, and so there's moments there is still I mean, it really just kind of comes down to, is like, what is the reason for it in the story, and how are you including it in the story?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I said about the film last week, Duck You Sucker, is that I didn't feel like it was necessary at all. It didn't tell us anything about one at all. It wasn't didn't progress the plot. But with this, it was like he's too far gone. You know, that was the point where, like, you know, there was no redeeming this character.
Right.
And whatever was going to happen, he was not going to end up happily ever after.
Right.
You know? But...
Yeah.
It's hard to say that this kind of scene, you know, is relevant, I guess. Because obviously it never is. But like I said, it does say a lot about the character. And, you know, tells you a lot that would have been hard to get across otherwise.
Yeah.
So a few things that I find interesting about this film, just in terms of Leone, is like, for one thing, he shoots it in 1.85 aspect ratio.
Yeah, that was a surprise too.
Instead of doing like a CinemaScope letterboxed widescreen. And I was reading that he did that because TV was so popular. He was like, people are going to watch this on TV, and I don't want it to be in letterbox while people are watching it. You know, they're going to be like people's head. Like, well, he really didn't want them to cut off the sides of the image, and then people like the shot to be not the shot that he composed, right?
Yeah.
So he was already like thinking ahead in terms of that. So that it's sad that in terms of that we lost him so early, because I think he would be a really interesting filmmaker to see what he does after this. You know, this is really the only besides Colossus of Rhodes, this is the only like non-Western that we got from him. And, you know, who knows what he would have done next. Another thing was Morricone composed the music, like finished the music for it 7 years before this movie was shot.
Wow.
Jeez.
So he was like already talking with them, and they were, you know, working on stuff. I mean, this was before there was a script, you know, which is just kind of crazy. But
and I love the score. Sorry to interrupt, but I loved how it had the kind of like grand overtones, but at the base of it was still like a child's toy. It was still like that little wood whistle that would kind of play over and everything. Just kind of, you know, they're still very childish all the way through. And that's, you know, the score just captures that.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well, my favorite use of music isn't even Leone. It's Yesterday.
Yeah.
The most bizarre version of Yesterday I've ever heard.
That's the bit that got me emotional.
Where only the first word
Yeah.
of each verse is sung.
Because that kicks in again when Max and Noodles are having the conversation at the end. And that was the bit that was like, oh my God. You know, it's so like beautifully done. I think it's coming in from the party outside. It's just so great.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, the friendship they've lost, like what could have been for these two people. You know, they could have been top of the world. I keep quoting Jimmy Cagney, but top of the world, ma. Yeah, it's, oh my gosh. That theme of friendship really, he just pulls it out. I thought Duck You Sucker missed, but this, it hit, you know. Apart from the awkward scene, Brandon, what else didn't work for you?
I think just overall, I just felt, I mean, I got that it was supposed to be about this friendship and stuff, but I didn't have that emotional connection to it, I guess. I didn't I mean, it's a movie I think that is supposed to kind of make you depressed. Like it's a different kind of movie, right? It's not your Hollywood blockbuster, which I can appreciate and stuff. But I think because I don't know, I think it might take a few rewatches for me to really know what I feel about this film, or to connect to it. I think I'm glad that we're recording this podcast because I'll probably listen to it before I rewatch it, just so I can like remember kind of how we dissected it and know what to look for and stuff. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint exactly what it is, but I think just by the end, I just felt like the journey was useless. But I think that's probably what the movie is trying to say.
Yeah.
Right? Was like this guy's journey was useless. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's the deepest I can go with it at the moment.
Yeah. No, I get it. I mean, it is all useless, but so is everything we ever do, as a human race. It's that's everything everywhere all at once coming at me now. It's like we're just a speck of time. There's so many like little things in this film that I absolutely loved. I loved when he went through into like the carnival and then came back out and it was like 30 years later. And that was done really well. And because I can't imagine this film, I kept thinking about it when I was watching it, being like cut chronologically.
Right.
It just would have, you could have, I just feel you could have seen the hook coming a mile away, because I was into it. I didn't see James Woods surviving.
Right. The first like 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is, basically everything up to when he is now coming back to New York and goes up and says, I need to rent a car. Everything up to that whole sequence is my favorite sequence in the whole film. From the opening of trying to find him and hunt him down. It's brutal. It's bloody. And then it gets weird, when he's smoking the opium and the phone won't stop ringing.
Oh my God.
And we're seeing glimpses of, I want to say they're flashbacks. We're seeing glimpses of the night before when he betrays his friends, but really they're sort of flash forwards to a scene we're going to see much later in the film. And then finally you see a shot of the phone and you're like, oh, thank God. And he picks it up and it's not the phone that's ringing.
I know.
He picks up
all that went through my head was
still ringing.
Was when we watched For a Few Dollars More. And you told me, you were like, if something's like funny, it's Leone messing with you.
Yes.
And that is just the biggest, mind bend.
That was the moment where I was hooked, where he picked up the phone and that's not the phone that's ringing.
Yeah.
And then just that wonderful sequence of him at the buying the ticket to get out. I don't, one-way ticket, okay, to Buffalo. Goes over and he looks in the reflecting glass or whatever it is, and then we're 30 years later, and it's him again in the same spot. The place has changed. It's been updated. He goes up to the updated version of this. It's a different desk, but it's in the same spot where the old one was. Rent a car. It's just, to me, that stuff is just, that playing with time is really, really cool to me.
Yeah.
And it's the sort of stuff that makes me, when it comes to like a movie's plot, I'm never kind of trying to outpace the movie and figure out what's coming next. But when you're messing with time like that, and it's more of a question of where is this taking me in the grand scheme of things. I'm not, trying to figure out the next twist. I'm more of trying to parse together what all of this means right now and what is it going to mean later. Which is why I think on a second viewing, that sequence is going to be real rewarding, where you're just going to sort of pick up on these things that, and even just going to the scenes of them as kids, having watched it again and picking stuff up with the little behaviors that the different kids are doing, when they're doing their little street crimes.
Yeah.
Getting busted by Fart Face. And...
Man, I think it's just a beautifully interwoven story about like men and just
it's definitely about men,
power and friendship and time, and there's so many layers to it.
Yeah,
like Zach said, can't wait to watch it again.
Yeah, I think when I rewatch it, I'll be looking at it through a different lens, because to me it I mean, I already said this earlier, it feels like a novel, but it also feels like a movie for well-read people, and I feel dumb when I watch this movie.
What
I feel like I'm not well-read.
I mean, you were talking you were talking about things like the minor stuff, like when the camera is sort of directing your eye and things like that. There's a lot of stuff that I did not pick up. When at least when I watch a movie once, and there were definitely, this is a long movie, obviously. There were pauses, and then getting back into it is kind of when you've paused the film and then coming back to it. I paused the film and I took about a 30-minute break after the scene where he rapes Deborah, because I sort of needed that break. Yeah. Not realizing that an intermission was coming up like 5 minutes later.
You're like, time to go back, and then it's like intermission. You're like, So a couple of things from the book.
Yes.
Someone, I can't remember this was a quote from someone, and I didn't write down who it was. I apologize. But this is from Christopher Frayling's biography on Sergio Leone. It says, in the script you could read something and it seemed like a nice little scene, but in Sergio's imagination, every scene is huge, monumental, visual, epic. It was always double, triple, 10 times the scope of what you read in the script. I say this in a good sense. Sergio visualizes what other people don't. And yeah, literally there was no small scene.
No.
Like everything was huge. And I did like the sets a lot. I liked. This time period is cool. That
shot of the kids where they're coming down the street, and it's kind of like it pulls out, and there's just that whole street full of people, and you can see like bridges in the background. It's just it's such a great, just snapshot of that time. I think of other films based around this, like Peter Jackson's King Kong. And this feels so much more like smoky and like grimy and, I don't know.
Yeah, it makes me want to go back and watch Gangs of New York and compare, because that was, early New York.
Yeah.
But I think it's even earlier.
Yeah, Gangs of New York is like during the Civil War.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the 1860s. But even like that compared to something like Peter Jackson's King Kong, I mean, this movie was filmed, nothing's digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Compared to King Kong, where your recreation of New York is all digital.
Yeah.
But even Gangs of New York, I'm sure there's digital modifications, but they filmed that on a huge set in probably the same studio that this movie was filmed at, Cinecittà in Italy. So a lot of those streets and those buildings, those are all there. So in Gangs of New York, there's probably some backgrounds that are
reminiscent,
that are modified digitally. But yeah, the watching those street scenes in this, where it's just like, from a filmmaking standpoint, it's wonderful to watch a movie and just know that is a crowd of 200 people that are actually 200 people, or however many, versus we got 10 people and we multiplied them over and over
exactly.
again.
It's the beauty of cinema, and just that one shot. I know it's on the cover of every film, every DVD.
Yeah.
But of them like skipping and like running in front of the bridge when it's like on the street level. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Yeah.
It's so great.
Mm-hmm.
Just the city like engulfing them kind of thing. My god, it's beautiful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they're little. They're minuscule compared to
what's around
the
them.
city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Something else that Sergio, a couple other things that he said that were in the book. One of them was, what can possibly follow that dream of America lost? Death. And this new film will certainly be about that, about death, which he was talking about another film that he was going to be making. But that quote is just like he died, you know, he didn't make another film, you know, which is like kind of crazy. Another one is, he said, I don't want to be remembered as a philosopher. Unlike so many of my celluloid brothers, I want to be remembered as an entertainer, you may as well forget me completely. My interest in America, indeed the universal interest in America, is because of the tale. America to my eyes appears like a long and cruel Arabian night, which is why my cinema is populated with thieves of Baghdad, kidnapped princesses, nasty magicians, birds which sing rock and roll. I must try to tell the stories of Shirazad, hope I said that right, and capture the attention of the public, or the death sentence will be carried out by dawn.
Man, he talked a lot about death towards the end.
Yeah. So, I did like a kind of speed read through this last chapter in the book, so I don't have like a ton of details for you guys, but from what I did read, his last film was supposed to be titled Leningrad, Leningrad, and it was something to do with the Soviet Union in Nazi era.
Oh wow!
And apparently the Russians like loved his movies, and he was kind of just going where the funding was. I think like they were like ready to give him money for something, and he was kind of leaning in that direction, but ultimately it never, like, I mean, there was already money getting in place and stuff, and some casting being done. I forgot what I just blanked on his name. The 80s actor that was in Iron Man 2 that was
Mickey
a boxer.
Rourke?
Yeah, he was supposed to be in it. And
hey, Mickey Rourke was a handsome guy in the 80s.
Oh yeah, no, he was. Yeah, I mean, in the 80s. I mean, this was still the 80s, so he was huge.
Yeah. I think that we've talked a lot about where Leone came from, and that Nazi occupation was a big part of his childhood. So to see him kind of put that onto film would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
He also would have been in really good company, because when Akira Kurosawa had trouble getting funding in Japan, he was too lured to the Soviet Union and made Dersu Uzala for the Soviets, and that won the Academy Award for foreign film that year.
Oh wow. Nice.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
For the Soviet Union,
interesting.
not Japan. But I mean, that makes a lot of sense. But also, if that was happening in the late 80s, that's when everything's going to shit and the Soviet Union is crumbling. Yeah. So I don't even know if Leone's death he could have lived, and that thing still could have fallen apart.
Yeah. True. Yeah, I mean, it took him a long time to get this movie made. I mean, I didn't, I said, I don't have a ton of facts for you guys, but it sounded like the production of this film just was surrounded by problems. Yeah. Like it took a while to get the funding, and then the producer who was supposed to be producing the film with him, was holding on to the rights, and then they had to re-get the rights because it's based on a book. They had to re-get the rights. It took a long time. And then also, once the production was over, all the recuts and like the studio not one. I mean, he had like a 6-hour version of this movie that he had to just keep cutting down. And then he got to the, the one that we watched, which is 3 hours and 49 minutes. And then they still chopped it up and it did terribly.
Yeah.
And at least in America.
In the United States.
Terribly.
Yeah. I mean, I was reading that he found this book in the 60s and knew immediately that he wanted to make this into a movie, and he was in contact with Harry Gray, is that the guy's name? The author of the novel. He was in touch with the author of the novel.
Like for a long time.
Yeah. For like they were communicating a lot throughout the 60s and 70s. He turned down The Godfather to make,
which we were kind of joking about last week. That like what would have a Godfather from Sergio Leone looked like? Because based on besides this film, based on everything else, it's like, it would be like a lot of quick zooms and close-ups of people's faces. But after watching this, you can really see how his Godfather would have been really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's very interested in a different aspect of the morality of those characters.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be the Shakespearean tragedy that the film turned out to be. I was actually thinking, because I was doing some Googling, so I don't know how accurate any of these things. This information that I found was that there was a rape scene filmed for The Godfather between where I think his name is Carlo, the guy who marries the daughter. Who, when they see that in the film, they see she has a black eye. So Sonny goes and beats the shit out of Carlo in the streets. Carlo is the guy we don't like in that movie, right?
Yeah.
He's the interloper and thinks he can do whatever he wants, but now that he's joining the family. There was a rape scene filmed where he rapes the sister that ended up being cut, I think, to the betterment of the film, because that's a movie where it's sort of like it's already a perfect movie. There's nothing. I don't think there's anything. You can't add anything to make this movie better. That would have brought it down.
Well, it's also a movie that was heavily. There was a lot of different creative people that went into it. It wasn't like Francis Ford Coppola was, the auteur of the film.
Right.
So
I was thinking though that character Carlo is probably more akin to the characters that we are encountering in this movie. I don't know how much interest Leone has in that honorable family aspect of The Godfather, or I don't know that his version of it would
have been
make
like that.
Because
ultimately it's the story of tragedy,
right? But there's this there's this element where Michael Corleone is a character who, if I'm remembering correctly, all of the crimes that he commits or that he participates in are sort of justified within the film for the family. Obviously, there's that you're not supposed to be rooting for him when he's killing all the enemies at the end. The scene where he kills the guy in the two guys in the pasta shop is very grisly, but there is this sort of warped justification that he's doing this for the family, right? And that kind of like wanton killing and of this movie feels a lot more gray than the morality of The Godfather. In The Godfather, the characters believe in what they're doing. That what we're doing is right. I don't necessarily know that these guys in this movie believe in anything.
No.
It's shit, we stole all these diamonds. They're paying us money. Why don't we just fucking kill them and then we have the money and the diamonds?
Yeah.
There's no code, despite the fact that they make their sort of pinky promise over the suitcase.
Yeah.
we see that gets broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know that Leone would approach The Godfather the same way that the people who ended up making it,
Right.
not just,
It-
you know,
Definitely wouldn't have been the same movie, but we can see that like he is a filmmaker that would have been good at being a director for hire.
Yeah.
You know.
yeah.
I mean, we saw
So-
it with Colossus of Rhodes. We've seen it from the very start. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's not a bad film. It is exactly what the studio wanted. It did good business.
Mm.
You know, he's
Yeah.
very talented, but you can, you know, I felt he's been trying to do this film since The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and I feel like, you know, Once Upon a Time in the West is phenomenal. Like, it's a really great film, but you can tell that he wanted out. It's not what, you know, it wasn't his
Yeah.
passion anymore.
Mhm.
Whereas this, you can just tell he's dreamt about it for so long. Everything is just like timed. It's just what he wanted to do. He got the
Yeah.
opportunity and he took it, you know. It's great.
Yeah, there was something in the book that said like, you know, the shorter version of the movie feels longer because you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think it's in chronological order.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, okay.
The shorter
Yeah.
version. I think that it just presents everything chronologically,
Ugh.
which really strips the movie of all of its thematic weight.
Mhm,
Yeah,
mhm. Yeah.
yeah.
Ugh. Oh dear. Well, I do want to know what you rated it, Brandon.
Do you want to guess?
Yeah, of course. 3.5.
I was thinking 3.5
Yeah.
All right.
for Brandon.
I'm gonna guess for you 4.5,
Okay. What did you rate it?
2.5.
Oh, wow.
I rated it 5.
Oh wow, first 5.
Yeah.
Wow, we really differed this time.
Yeah. Yeah, last week we're so alike on everything.
Uh-huh.
Literally held hands
Yeah.
and skipped out of the podcasting booth.
I think that I think my rating will definitely go up the next time I watch it.
Yeah.
We'll see when that is, but I think just overall, just like, you know, left the film feeling weird,
Yeah.
That's fine.
unsure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to like. That doesn't, it as opposed to like Duck You Sucker, which I wouldn't really suggest people go seek that out really, unless there's like a specific shot that I'm like, you need to go see this.
You're a
shot in this movie.
completionist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're trying to complete.
Yeah, Whereas this movie, I do feel like people should watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, even though I rated it lower.
Well, I
But-
mean, that's personal taste, isn't it? I mean, there's other things like I said about, you know, for a few dollars, well, not so much a few dollars more. Once Upon a Time in the West, I was like, I can tell this is a good film, but it didn't.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't necessarily do it for me. It wasn't like, oh my god, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, whereas I felt what this did.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand that.
Yeah.
I think I love like the music in Once Upon a Time in the West. I think it's my favorite score.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But like score of any movie.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's high praise. Mine's Vertigo, as you can probably tell.
Sweet.
I don't know.
I think
what
we
mine
already
is.
I think we already both know that this is a 5-star for Zach.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't think we even have to
I'm
ask.
very generous with my 5s. You know, but don't feel, you know, bad for not liking it. It's not.
No, I don't. I don't. I think
there's a lot to dislike about this film. You know, I should walk back what I said earlier about young people. It's not just young people.
these youngsters.
These youngsters. I don't want to sound like an old man complaining about cancel culture.
But it is.
I've been getting into these discussions lately with my parents about stuff that we're watching, and I have found, particularly lately, that I am just really into unlikable characters and darker stuff right now. I'm not like looking for. I think the big sticking point right now is Ted Lasso. My parents love that show. I watched the first 3 episodes. It didn't really get me. And then it was like the opposite with Succession.
Yeah.
I started watching Succession and I got sucked in, and my parents were like, my dad said, I just don't like any of these people. I can't watch. And I think that's it's like a normal thing, especially right now.
Oh, yeah.
The world fucking sucks. You look back, the world sucked in the 60s, and you could watch Star Trek, and Star Trek was like, oh, the future's so hopeful.
Yeah.
The world sucks right now, but if you're watching like current Star Trek, it's like the world sucks.
Yeah.
Still, there's nothing. I know that right now, at this point in my life, the things that really excite me as a viewer or as a reader are things that are more biting, things that are more cynical, unlikable characters, despicable characters, even.
Yeah, and I think
that is not everyone's cup of tea.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's,
I mean,
and even from a film to film basis, it's like you can love anti-heroes and still there is nothing to like about the characters in this film.
Yeah.
There really isn't. I mean, the most likable character moments are probably the kid eating the cupcake and Jennifer Connelly dancing, because there's this innocence there, that there's no corruption going on. Well, she's being peeped on, so maybe not, but it's just sort of like everyone's lives go to shit. People treat each other poorly, they treat themselves poorly in this film, and it is it puts you in a very negative headspace that kind of makes you want to just suck down some opium and forget about it.
Yeah, drift off to a better place.
Which is
not what I want to do right now.
I know.
I want something to tell me life is good.
I understand.
I'm worried about my pick.
It's okay. It's okay.
I understand that. We're in a time.
That's why we go back and forth, Lewis.
Yeah, there you go. Lewis, I think I'm not sure if you experienced this, Brandon, but I know Lewis and I have sort of shared that. There's my pick, and then there's my wife's pick, and there's a complete diametric opposite there.
Oh yeah.
More often than not, I like her pick, and she does not like my pick. That's okay.
Yeah. Chelsea says
sometimes I surprise her.
Chelsea says that all I watch are depressing films. So
yeah, I get that too.
Yeah,
but my wife, she loved Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh, good.
She absolutely loved it, and she loved Petite Maman. So I was like, all right, 2 for 2.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, we're getting this is the last episode of our Leone series. There's still a lot more for me to read in the book, and so listeners, at some point in the future, maybe it might take a year or more, I don't know, but we might put together a video essay that just kind of like really compiles what you need to know about Leone.
Yeah,
but
maybe we could go through our ranking of the Sergio Leone films.
Yeah, let's do it.
Bottom to top, and then we can give a bit more context and hindsight.
I want to. You want to do the ranking of the movie? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe in like a few weeks we can sit down and kind of go over the ranking again as some kind of video essay.
And you don't want to pick it right now?
Oh yeah, we can, but cool. After we get hindsight, just kind of talk about if this has changed in our minds once things have sat with us, or
Yeah, sweet. I do want to like close out what Leone's life, because we've talked about him obviously through this whole thing. Tell you how he passed. So in the early morning of Sunday, April 30th, 1989, Sergio and Carla Leone were watching television together in bed at their villa on the Via Nepal. They were watching, ironically, I Want to Live by Robert Wise's harrowing film of 1958, which shows the execution in a California gas chamber of Barbara Graham, played by Suzanne Hayward, for a crime she probably did not commit. Suddenly, Sergio leaned his head on Carla's shoulder and said, "I'm sorry, I don't feel very well." Within a few seconds, he was gone. Carla called an ambulance shortly after at 1:30 a.m., but it was already too late. Although the obituaries were to give the cause of death as a heart attack, he in fact died because his heart simply stopped beating. And he had been in bad health for a while. I was reading that from Christopher Freiling's book, but he had been in bad health for a while, and he, it sounded like he already knew that death was coming and stuff, and he had an opportunity to get like a heart transplant, and he didn't really want to do that, and just didn't want to be like physically limited in his older life. But he was only 60. And I mean, you look at pictures of him, from the time he was making, he died in 89, but Once Upon a Time in America came out in 84. And even in those pictures, he's in his mid 50s and he looks
old. Yeah.
Old. Yeah.
Weathered.
Which is strange because it's like
Guys
people
aged.
in their 50s now.
Guys aged much faster back then.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he smoked cigars and he ate a lot, and, he was not active physically.
I always do that with like watching a film from the 40s or something like that, and there's like an old fat guy in it, and I look him up, and it's like he was like 45 when he made this movie.
Yeah.
And he died 10 years later.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
So that was kind of the end of his story. But I mean, his legacy has lived on, and he's influenced so many filmmakers. I mean, even while he was alive, he was influencing Spielberg and Lucas and Scorsese and like the film brats and stuff, and then later on, like, the indie filmmakers of the 90s, Tarantino and Rodriguez and those guys and stuff all were heavily influenced by him. So
I mean, I'd like to see, like, I mean, I can't really think too much of stuff that seems like it was influenced by this film. Maybe The Irishman, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
There's so many parallels there, but
not a lot of people, like, you think about it, like the American, like, longer release of this movie didn't reach us until like what, 10 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like home video.
Yeah,
but probably earlier than 10 years. But yeah, I mean, basically DVD, I guess. I assume that the DVD release is probably the first time it got released.
Yeah.
Here on that 2-disc set.
Yeah.
With the scratched second disc.
And so, I mean, by the time
it was just deliberately scratched.
By the time it was available, it's like the market is so oversaturated, and it's like, who's gonna sit down and watch a 4-hour movie?
Well, that's our generation. We have to make the film.
Yeah.
That is influenced. By
exactly.
This one.
Yep. There you go.
And not The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Mm-hmm. So
throw in that weird version of Yesterday into your next film, or a cover of another Beatles song in the same style.
Yeah,
it's cheaper to do covers of Beatles songs.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's cheap, but it's cheaper.
Yeah, cheaper.
I doubt it is cheap. So where are we going to rank it, Brandon?
I feel like you want to put it at number 1. Because you like rated it 5. This is your first 5-star Leone film.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like you want to put it at number 1.
But I know that we talked about that. I feel like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is essential.
It's like the iconic movie. Like, it is probably we're talking about like what is the greatest Leone film of all time. I feel like it's got to be The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Whereas like Once Upon a Time in America, even though, I didn't like it as much as you, I feel like it's still, it's like his most personal film, probably. It's like it's his life's work, as opposed to like his, what critically looking at like what his greatest film of all time is, So I'm fine with you putting it wherever you want.
Okay.
That sounded dirtier than I meant it to. But
Don't squeeze me on my
as
poop.
long as Good, Bad, and the Ugly is on top.
Okay.
Still sounds dirty.
And I'm going to slide in right underneath and put it at number 2.
Okay.
If that's okay with you.
You're going to put it in number 2.
That's right.
Let's go.
Oh my God.
I like where this is going.
In at number 2, Once Upon a Time in America.
You know, Lewis, you were talking about the how close that friendship between Max and Noodles is, and
Yeah.
I am actually, you got my the wheels turning. I'm like, I wonder if there's like queer criticism
Wow.
about this movie, because I bet you could definitely read the homoerotic subtext between those two guys,
Yeah.
especially since Max couldn't get it up
Yeah.
when he was having sex with the
Yeah. I mean, and then there's the scene where Carol is like trying to have a
threesome,
like a
Right, she
threesome,
pitches a
fivesome, or
threesome,
whatever
or-
she's trying
yeah.
to do, and he's like, "It's not my kind of thing."
Yeah.
I think he says, "I'm not that kind of guy."
Oh yeah.
And in the following scene, he rapes Deborah,
Yeah.
or he takes her out to dinner, and then he rapes
Yeah. There's,
her.
I mean, in Duck You Sucker, there's, the ending scene where it's pretty heavily indicated that there's a little, triple dating life going on between the three characters. So it's not, out of the realms that Leone is hinting that there's some homoerotic undertones to films.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised. Just another reason to watch it, Brandon. Is there any more clues?
Yeah, exactly. So, ladies and gentlemen, sorry, what were you going to say? Zach?
I was just going to talk about like sexually repressed Italians from the 20th, growing up in the 20th century. I don't know. It's got to be a lot of sexual repression in Italian culture.
Yeah.
From at least from Leone's generation. Anyway, I digress.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that is
Wow.
Leone, the entire filmography.
Thank you for
And-
suggesting this, Brandon. It's been a blast.
Yeah, I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
Yeah, dude.
I was afraid by the end you were going to be like, that was annoying.
When you first teased this miniseries, like a few weeks before you started it, you didn't say who it was, and you said it was a filmmaker who had directed 7 films, and I was like, who has directed 7 films? I did my Googling, and I was like, Sofia Coppola, an interesting choice.
Yeah.
I know that you had you were very deep in the Francis Ford Coppola territory for a while there, Brandon.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, maybe they're going in there. So I was surprised and delighted as well that that it was Leone. I was just like, oh yeah, I guess he also only made 7 films.
Yeah,
And he's not making any more. Sofia Coppola will expand her filmography.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It feels like so much more. I feel like there's so much cinema that he's given us.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, a lot of that's in the legacy.
Yeah.
So if you want to see what we ranked all these films, just visit us on Letterboxd. On Lewis's Letterboxd, Lewis Walker 3007. He's got the official ranking of Film Church Radio. But what are we watching? Where are we going next with Film Church Radio, Lewis? What are we watching next week?
Yeah, well, I know that you said that you wanted something that was uplifting and not necessarily about death. So I chose the film that is most about death. I've chosen The Seventh Seal by Ingmar Bergman for us to
literally
watch.
about death.
Yeah. It's, again, like I said, it's a director I've been wanting to get more into, and I wanted to talk to you about it, and this seems like the perfect place for us to jump in.
Sweet. I'm excited.
And it's on HBO Max as well, so easily accessible.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're going to be
You
doing.
should follow that one up with Last Action Hero.
Oh.
Starring... Have you guys seen Last Action Hero?
I've never seen Last
Yes.
Action Hero.
Oh,
That's
Lewis.
Schwarzenegger, right?
Yeah, but there's some deep Seventh Seal references in that film.
Really? I haven't seen it since I was a kid. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Death comes out of the movie and then is living in the he's a character in the movie. In Last Action Hero, he leaves the seventh seal.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
I think now I'm like, is that what happens?
Sweet.
We'll have to do a double bill.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I'm not confusing him with something else. But
Well,
how embarrassed! No, Ian McKellen plays him.
oh, awesome. I love Ian McKellen.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, maybe we can find that clip and watch it before the show.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
You just need to.
Yeah. That brings us to the end of the show. Zach, thank you so much for being a part of this and for
Thanks for
closing
having
out
me.
this Leone season with us. It's been great.
Thank you for getting me to finally watch this movie.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was a real struggle. You can find the show on Twitter and Instagram at Film Church Radio, and you can follow us individually, as Brandon said, on Letterboxd. Brandon is at Salmonscope. I am at WalkerLewis3007. Keep up with what we've been watching. We post everything there. We also have all of our back episodes streaming on all good podcast platforms. So, like I said, leave us a rating review. Tell us if you like us. If you don't, just give us 5 stars anyway. And any recommendations for what you would want us to watch in the future. But, Brandon, it's been a while since we last recorded. What have you been doing all these years?
I've been going to bed early.
Nice. And on that note, we are putting the Leone films to bed as well. Thank you so
You
much.
better stop squeezing me or I'm going to poop in my pants.
We had to get it in.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, guys, for coming on this journey. We hope you've enjoyed it and have a great weekend.
Amen.
Amen.
Bye, y'all. Good night.
Bye.
Good day. Good day.
And cut.